All right, Wednesday, Best Ball Breakfast, which means we have a Best Ball Mania 4 doubleheader. First up, drafting with the BBM3 champ, Pat Kerrane. And then next up after that, it is the Best Ball Banana Stand with RotoViz's Shawn Siegel. The draft board has been getting flipped on its head lately with all of this training camp news. Holdouts, hold-ins will be fun to navigate. 2 Best Ball Mania drafts for $3 million here on Best Ball Breakfast. Let's do it.
Oh, another Influencer 101 for the backward hats, bro. Rigged!
Zach Ertz with no Tyler Algier bringback? Yikes.
You reached around for correlation? That's a no-no. You ADP bros disgust me. How about you just live a little?
Handcuffing might actually be a way to get unique if the field's avoiding it.
The Wi-Fi at this resort is a disaster?
These fucking streamers don't have player takes. What if a piss boy draft is the room you need?
Oh!
Pat, on Monday, I drafted a team on Best Ball Breakfast that had 3 quarterbacks with the same bye week. And then the chat, I was like, oh man, first time doing this, last time doing this. And everyone was like, no. You did that with Pat on a Dalmation draft. That must have been over on Ship Chasing, right?
You don't remember this? We specifically were like, we got to get a third quarterback because we have 2 week 7 buys. And you wanted someone who didn't have a week 7 bye. I was like, but Pete, this other quarterback's better. I can't remember the specifics of the quarterback, but I think I wanted Stroud or something, and you wanted Howell probably. And anyway, we took 3 straight quarterbacks with the week 7 bye.
Yeah. Why? I don't know why I can't find this in my. Was this last year or was this on your account? This had to have been.
This is on my account.
Okay.
I can pull up the team. It's hilarious. It'll be easy to find because it's the Dalmation.
Yeah, well, it's so funny you say that because one of my Dalmatians had an Anthony Richardson, Desmond Ridder, 2 week 11s, and then took Sam Howell. So I was like, on that one, I did sidestep it here. But yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you to everyone reminding me that I have done a triple week 11.
Yeah, I started getting tagged yesterday on this, and I was like, what's going on? Okay, so it actually wasn't the Dalmation. Oh, it was the Dalmation 2. That's what it was.
Okay, Dalmation 2 is what it was.
Yeah.
All right. If you want to pull this up here, I am getting hopped in a draft that Snap filled here, was trying to let people know in the Discord. Pat, you will be stunned. Does everyone want to guess as I pull up the draft board where I am drafting for my 101 ninth? Pat, I don't know if you've seen, I am on an epic run of horrible draft slots. You will not be surprised where we're picking today.
Oh no. All right. Yeah. I haven't seen.
It's starting to get like a little out of control. We're drafting from the 11th spot today, which has been a very familiar spot for me here. So this is just how it goes these days, Pat. And I don't even hate like how it lines up for like the players and stuff you get. I don't hate how my teams turn out. I'm just bored with these late slots right now.
Dude, I feel like we're always out of the 11. Do we keep doing the Lamar Jackson thing? And then it's like, are we going to get the guys? Do they fall? Then they don't fall. Then we take Odell. Like, how many times have we done this? We're doing that again?
We're doing it again, apparently.
It's just like I mean, from a content perspective, this is starting to become a problem.
I know, exactly. Dan's in my same boat here. Influencer Pete has fallen off. I mean, clearly, I haven't had a 101 since the second Clinton administration. Tyler wants me to rename this Lulz because my pick spots are hilariously a bummer. You know what? Shout out to everyone who has, more than 8% Justin Jefferson, because it's not me, Pat. It's not me.
That is rough.
All right, let's get to a few housekeeping things before we pick. We do feed the ducks here in the early draft. We'll get the ducks. I got my hot coffee. Cold brew week is over. The people have spoken. They want the hearty pour. So here you guys go. All right, there's the coffee pour. Let's figure out our pick here, and then people want the Pat Kerrane take on the Cooper Kupp situation, which broke. I don't know, was that late last night or early this morning? We can talk about that. But Pat, we are going to be picking from the 111 here. You can see, other than Nick Chubb, I'm over the field on all of these guys due to all of my late picks. What is jumping out to you here as we're about to be on the clock?
I mean, I take 2 of these wide receivers usually, and I certainly would prefer to do that in this room. Although I guess, if we're going to get Eckler or Bijan at a big discount. That is tempting.
I know. So Eckler falls all the way to 111. That seems kind of wild.
You tell me. Can we get away with it?
Yeah, because we'll grab one of these wide receivers to pair with him. And we'll see what Batch does here. He goes Garrett Wilson and Nick Chubb. So we have our choice. I feel like Eckler Amon-Ra has to be a little rare, right?
For sure. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So we do start Austin Eckler, Amon-Ra. I'm sure there were some where early on in Best Ball Mania drafting where Eckler was going a little later, but at least over these past, 8 weeks? I feel like it's been, that would be
he was in the second round to begin.
Yeah.
So I guess it won't be like super uncommon overall, but it'll be what this draft is looking like after this will not look a lot like this, I think.
Yeah. So what someone wanted you to talk about the Cooper Kupp stuff. Do you think he should drop here? He does go after Christian McCaffrey, which hadn't been happening in a lot of drafts.
That's probably what should happen. You take Hill over him now. And I wouldn't take McCaffrey over him in this room, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
But I would probably take McCaffrey over him. I don't know. I mean, it's tough. I don't want to take McCaffrey over him. This is the problem because of the way these rooms kind of shake out. Like I know the third round, I'm probably not taking a wide receiver. If Olave goes like this, I don't love taking a wide receiver in the spot that the Kupp drafter's in. I would probably do what he did and grab Pollard. But if that's McCaffrey, like the McCaffrey, I like Kupp Pollard better than McCaffrey Devontae Smith. I just think that's a better start.
Yeah. I mean, so now, the big thing with Kupp is 30-year-old wide receiver, soft tissue injury, team that has some question marks. We're all excited about a healthy Cooper Kupp. We know how that the entire offense can flow through him. But when you start layering on some of these other concerns, it does start to give you a teeny bit of pause up there. But it's just, there's not a lot of attractive alternatives. Like taking Diggs over Cooper Kupp doesn't feel right to me.
I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to miss a few weeks of the hamstring injury. And the concern is hamstring injuries generally have a pretty high recurrence. And then, does he try to come back too soon? Does he struggle through it? I am encouraged I would recommend people check out Adam Levitan's podcast with Stefania Bell. She actually talked about how his recovery from his ACL, he was so integrated with the trainers, and basically his rehab was, he was like, can we adjust the rehab because I'm trying to run routes like this, and he's the kind of symbiotic relationship he has with the training staff there is really rare. So I'm if any player's gonna come back correctly from this injury, I feel like it's probably Kupp. I don't think he's gonna rush back and not understand where he is, but of course it's a hamstring and you can always re-pull the hamstring.
I did just know that we have someone in our draft with the username Week 17, although they have not done any Week 17 correlations yet.
Well,
we're about to be on the clock. You see Jahmyr Gibbs going very early here. We're about to pick at 311. Amari Cooper, Breece Hall, Lamar Jackson, Keenan Allen, Najee, Jerry Jeudy, Christian Watson on the board here. What do you think, Pat, with Beach Bum OTC right now?
Who's Batch 9? Who is that?
Batch 9 is someone who watches these streams.
All right.
Got his Nick Chubb, Garrett Wilson, Week 17 correlation here.
Let's take Breece, dude.
Just take Breece. Just keep living. We got, do you got notifications turned on for Crack Rock and all of his New York Dalvin Cook reporting these days?
Well, I mean, the guy doesn't miss. What'd he say? He said Dalvin was leaving New York. You know where I am right now? New York. You know where Dalvin Cook isn't? New York.
Exactly. Pat, also just you are having a little of your video is freezing here. I don't know if you want to close out some tabs, but let's make this pick. So he goes Amari Cooper Keenan Allen. This is our age-old Lamar Jackson, or do we go like Watson, Drake London, McLaurin?
I was hoping we could get Keenan coming back. Let's go. I do Jackson again. I don't care.
I've been trying to boost up my Jackson. I seem to mostly boost up my Lamar Jackson with you here. He does slide 4 picks past ADP. I think it's worth a shot here, but I am putting my foot down right now. No Odell Beckham.
No Odell Beckham. His receivers are falling.
Yeah.
So maybe we have a better chance than usual. Why does this keep happening? This is like what we always do.
I'm telling you, it's just like I'm living in Groundhog Day.
We're also boxed out of Dobbins, I would say. Like we can't really afford the third running back.
Yeah. Pat, I do see you still have the Dalmation screen shared here. Why don't you close that one out? Maybe that's contributing to it. I never pulled it up, but everyone believes you that we took 3 week 11 buys.
No, I know, but I just thought it'd be funny to see because we got a falling Stroud at the 17-12.
Yeah.
And I think you wanted Ritter.
Yeah.
I was like, no, dude, we gotta scoop this Stroud value as our third quarterback.
It's so funny because like pure calendar wise, that was less than 8 weeks ago that we did that draft probably. And I literally can't even remember it. Like I've done so many drafts on stream that it is all a blur to me. I had like no recollection of that until people pointed it out.
It's funny. I was on the sticks for that one, so it definitely jumps out. I mean, you'll never guess who's on the team. Breece Hall.
Yeah.
It's actually a pretty sick team. We got Alexander Madison at the 7-12, Dameon Pierce at the 801.
Okay.
Jalen Warren is our 4th running back.
Yeah. The JB wants to know, are you still on the clock in 40 slow puppies right now? How's that slow draft life going for you here? As we see Jackson Smith and Jigba coming off the board at 44.
I was able to get my slow drafts down to so that the one that expires the soonest, I have an hour and 6 minutes. So
okay.
I'm barely hanging in there. I was like, I couldn't get all of them done before I went to bed. I was like, I got like, but I gave myself like 9 hours, and so I was like, I'll be fine. But then I did a couple picks this morning, and yeah, I'm on the clock in 59 slow drafts.
And not to mention now we are layering on being on the clock. You, Gretchen, and I are doing our FFPC main event. That's an $1,800 buy-in slow draft. We had scheduled a recording because we do these mini-sodes for the Ship Chasing YouTube members where we break down our decision-making when we're on the clock. We had scheduled it serendipitously last night, not realizing that when we were getting on to record, we had literally 18 minutes left to make the pick. All of the guys from our league coming out of the woodwork, DMing us on Discord, adding us on Twitter. You guys do know you're about to time out, right? We kind of knew, but thank you for those reminders.
I actually didn't know that we were, but I mean, we luckily scheduled it for like, like if we had been like, let's just meet at 9 instead of 8. We were like, oh, we timed out. Exactly. My video's really doing bad, huh?
All right, we're about to pick at 5'11". We got Lamar Jackson at quarterback, Austin Eckler and Breece Hall at running back. Only one wide receiver here, Amon-Ra St. Brown here. Probably should get a couple wide receivers here, Pat.
Got to.
We do have Deontay Johnson, Tyler Lockett, Mike Evans, Michael Pittman, Jordan Addison, Gabe Davis, Jahan Dotson. Like I said, I have no problem bouncing around with any of these guys in this tier here. Anyone standing out to you, or do you want to play the hits?
I would go Johnson. Yeah, I had not selected, I don't believe, any 5th round Johnson. Like I had packed my bags pretty heavily and then cooled off, but he does slide here a few picks past ADP, and I'm happy to select him in this build, and then we'll see what Batch does. He goes, ooh, Deshaun Watson and Kenneth Walker there. Yeah. I'd be happy to take Lockett.
Do you get the mini going and get us another quarterback out?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of more open to 5th round Johnson, I think. Partly because I was mad at myself that I didn't take more like late 6th round Johnson. And I was just like, I'm not going to be underweight because I think he's a think he's a pretty solid pick. But the other thing is that I'm not that into Chris Godwin. And I ended up taking Chris Godwin on a number of like the higher stakes stuff that I did. So I'm underweight, but my overall like dollar exposure is like higher than I would like.
Right.
And so Johnson like if the market was like we like, Jackson Smith and Jigba is now like never leaving the middle of the fifth, I would take him regularly in the middle of the fifth.
Right.
Yeah, sorry, my video here. I don't know.
Yeah, your audio is good. Your video is just lagging. Tyler wants me to buy you a comically large wine glass for the stream. I need to buy him a comically large PC with all kinds of horsepower is what I need.
I bought one of those.
I know. Don't you have the same PC I do now?
Yeah.
How are you? Because that's actually something I've been wanting to ask you, because you have been playing a ton of volume at high stakes this year for best ball. Are you thinking through your portfolio through like a dollar spent on that versus just overall percentage? Because if you're doing some of the Mastiffs or Bulldogs at volume, like that can really skew like where you're actually overweight from a dollars perspective.
Yeah, I'm not doing it as in depth as I probably should. And like going through it, because a lot of my high stakes stuff is also on DraftKings, and I'm not tracking that exposure as diligently as I look at my underdog exposure way more.
Yeah.
But one thing that I will do, Liam talked about doing this, and I've kind of done this a little bit. Is like sometimes I'll break ties in a high stakes draft towards a guy that I don't always draft, and so it's like, all right, well. At least if this guy who I don't usually draft, if I'm wrong about the fade position that I have, at least it'll be on a team that is a higher stakes team in a smaller field, and so like I'll stand to benefit from that guy having a good season. Like I'm more likely to realize value. I'm not like always doing that, but occasionally if someone's like available and I'm like, I probably should have another share of this dude, so you get kind of an impact share.
Yeah, and like I thought of that, I was kind of light on Lamar Jackson, which is funny because you and I always select him. But then I did my Bulldog draft, that $500 draft, and I took Lamar Jackson. And that I thought, this is worth, the equivalent of 20 best ball manias. And like I'm getting a Lamar Jackson share. It like helps me get that portfolio closer to where I'd actually like to be on Lamar, which is at least even the field. And I was pretty below. So I do like how you can kind of almost overcorrect for exposure mistakes with some of those higher dollar contests.
For sure.
Also, we got a few new YouTube members here. Jay and Dan, welcome aboard. Appreciate you guys. This will get you access to the Best Ball After Dark series this week on Best Ball After Dark. I booked, Pat knows this guy well, Jacob Sanderson.
Nice.
I've gotten to know him a teeny bit through Pat's streams, through coming on Chip Chasing Quickly, but I've never got to actually sit down with Jacob myself and have a longer form conversation. So that'll be on Thursday night after the randomizer draft, which I'm doing with Fantasy Life's Kendall Valenzuela. Pat, praise be to God. Our Ravens receivers come back. Which one do you want?
Zay's fine if we want to play the ADP game.
Yeah, and there are some really nice running backs available too. If something comes back, I'm down to leave our options open for a double tap or running back faller. Let's grab Zay.
Zay fits our build pretty well. All right, I say we go Bateman.
I think we do too. Like the Swift faller is, we talked
nice.
about that last week, how we both have been trying to get our Swift up, but man, getting the double stack when we're behind at wide receiver with Lamar just feels too good.
That's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
All right. No Odell Beckham shares.
No Odell
Pat
Beckham.
Pete here. We get Lamar Jackson at quarterback, Austin Eckler, Breece Hall at running back, our wide receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Deontay Johnson, Tyler Lockett, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman. I feel like that's always a tightrope walk, Pat. We finally pulled off the Lamar without falling to our death.
We did it, dude. Now we just need to get some running backs, fill out tight end. I think we're gonna have ourselves a team.
Exactly. Thank you, Nick. Here, got the link if you guys want to become a YouTube member. And then what was I saying? Oh, yeah, Kendall Valenzuela from Fantasy Life. She is going to be my randomizer guest. She's my Sirius XM co-host, and we're going to have a lot of fun with that. She's also a Seattle super fan across all those sports, so we can start cooking up some ideas for prompts there. And then, Pat, tonight, on ship chasing, we're running it back. Last week we did a 34 round NFFC best ball draft, and we're sick enough that we're now going to do it again tonight on ship chasing.
I'm looking forward to it. I got to be honest. I mean,
I know
the game theory. It's sort of like a game theory intermission during the draft, where like you're starting to run out of players that you're excited about, and then all of a sudden Justin Tucker comes off the board, and you're like, we got to start thinking about getting some kickers here, because you got to get 3 kickers. And then during the kicker thing, the defenses start going, and you're like, I got to make sure we get them 3 defenses here too. So it gets fun.
It is truly fun, because like in these drafts, right? Like the one thing you're always worried about is a wide receiver avalanche, but you want to see a positional avalanche. Watch our draft tonight with when the defensive run happens, because the way this format works is ideally you'd like to have at least 3 defenses and 3 team kickers. However, there's 12 people in a league. That would be 36 of that. So someone's getting shut out from getting 3 if that's like the ideal optimal construction. So basically what happens is once the dam or, the seal is broken, it just floods, and you're just trying to do math, being like, are we going to be able to get that 3rd kicker, that 3rd defense? So if you want to see more avalanches, tune in tonight.
And inevitably you are like behind in an actual position that matters. You know what I mean? So you're like, can I push this defense one more? Is the room going to punish me for grabbing this like running back or tight end value that I actually really need? Yeah, so it'll be fun. We did it last time. We're 1 for 1. We got 3 defenses and we pushed it. We were a little aggressive and we got away with it. So looking forward to seeing if we can do it again.
All right, about to be on the clock at 9:11 here. Tua comes off the board. You got Gibson, Charbonnet, Pirine, Pat Freiermuth is kicking around here.
Can you click on running back?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would do Freiermuth. Unless are you into one of these running backs?
I don't mind Gibson's the big faller if we think Batch isn't going to double tap. What do you like, Gibson or Freiermuth?
Let's do Freiermuth.
Okay. Freiermuth here. I like locking him up. We get our tight end here. We already have Deontay Johnson. We have the Tyler Lockett bring back. I do not mind Pirine in this build if we want to see how far Sharps falls in a draft. Anything else stand out to you?
I would say, Pirine or Brian Robinson. Both are going to help us get Breece Hall kind of, through that early season where he probably won't do much.
Do you have a preference?
Yeah, let's go Pirine.
Okay. We grabbed Samaje Pirine here. So we grabbed Freiermuth and Pirine at this turn. The team now, Lamar Jackson at quarterback, Eckler, Breece Hall, Pirine at running back, wide receivers, Amon-Ra, Deontay Johnson, Tyler Lockett, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, tight end, Pat Freiermuth here. What do you think? Because it is interesting to me. Like, how do you think efficiently the Denver backfield ADP should shake out with the confirmed news that Javonte is on track? He's at practice. He's not on PUP. I get that Javonte should rise. I'm just not convinced Pirine should actually be dropping.
I thought he should drop, but then that was sort of my initial reaction, but I've actually come back. I'm sort of like somewhat back in. But to me, he serves a purpose where, like, if you don't need the early season boost, then I don't know how much he does for you. Because down the stretch, we're now, I think, more confident that he will not be like a difference-making running back. And that's not a great position to put yourself in, where you're like, the one thing I'm like most confident about this guy is that he won't be doing a ton in the most important weeks. So that, whereas before, like Javonte, if he was going to miss like the first 6 weeks of the season, and then is he ever going to get right? Like, it doesn't look like a lost season for Javonte now. Even if he's, even if he like comes out and it's like, he was active week 1, but he only played 20% of the snaps, we could get that. But I think he's on track to be something down the stretch, I think. And that thing's Pirine to an extent.
Yeah, but I would say like all the running backs going in this range, offer similar, production in the form of like you're going to have some standalone value either through pass catching, goal line roll, early down work, and then still have that really big contingent upside. I think in the scenarios where it was a lost season for Javonte, Pirine is just absolutely destroying his ADP, where I think he can still easily return value even with a full season of health from Javonte, and like those kind of contingent upside benefits still exist. If Javonte misses a game or two, like if you get two 20+ point games from Pirine when Javonte's dinged up at this draft cost and some standalone, running back production, like you're going to be very happy with that.
Yeah, you are. That's true.
All right, we're about to pick at 11 here. We can keep an eye on some of these wide receivers.
Dulcich.
I know Dulcich was looking nice. You could stack up Amon-Ra with Jared Goff. We both like Jalen Warren if we want to go mega with the Steelers. What do you like?
I think Jalen Warren. Does Batch have any reason to take Goff?
No. He's dialed into Rodgers here with 2 Jets.
All right, sweet.
All right, so we'll add Jalen Warren as our 4th running back here. And then are you okay? So if we take Goff, this is also, it also could very much be a Kenny Pickett team, although Goff here certainly makes sense as well. I
think Goff's way more exciting. Bye week wise, we're good.
All right, let's add Jared Goff here. And then this is going to put us in a spot here where we'll have to see if some wide receivers start to look nice to us. I've been starting to kind of gravitate a little bit to Rashee Rice in this range, just because I do think he should be coming up with the Tony news, and his ADP doesn't seem to have budged much.
I think it flipped, he flipped Mingo. I think he was going after Mingo. But yeah, it hasn't come up a ton. Yeah. He was God, who had the tweet with the first time meme? Maybe it was Kyle or Dago, I forget. But with Rashee Rice was back with the second team after like the day with the ones after Tony got hurt, and it's like, okay. Yeah. This guy more treatment.
You want to talk about, reacting though to news, we have Marvin Mims go at pick 140 there, his ADP 163. It's just interesting, like how some players are getting really rocketed up relative to news compared to others.
But I think that makes sense. Like, I think we should be more aggressive about Marvin Mims compared to Rashee Rice, because Marvin Mims, he was a much better prospect. He was also a 2nd round pick, and he was blocked, right? It was like through no fault of Marvin Mims' own, he won't get playing time this year. It's like, well, now Tim Patrick's out for the season and KJ Hamler's out of the way. Not that he was a huge part of the case, but it was just like another guy. And now it's like, well, I don't know. I think they kind of need to play Marvin Mims. So right. I actually think we should probably be pretty. I probably haven't been aggressive enough. I've been sniped on him like repeatedly over the last 2 days, thinking like, oh, I don't need to like take him here. Like that's way too ahead of ADP.
Well, I would say it's one of the probably trickier things to think through, where news breaks, players are mispriced relative to that news. We do still have the 1 to 2 day lag on ADP updating, and we're all kind of playing this game of chicken with like, can I get Marvin Mims close to ADP? But knowing like across all these drafts, there's people like week 17 here taking him at 140. And so you're like, we want to get a deal on it, but you also don't want to just completely get shut out before the rise is fully baked in.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's see what we are going to do here. We could talk a little bit that I think we can talk through, some people were talking about taking Goff instead of Deontay, or instead of setting up the Pickett thing. I don't mind it personally, because the whole point of the stacks is you want to have access and stacks to multiple games. Some of those are going to come without the quarterback. So even if you have 3
some of them should come without the quarterback.
they necessarily have to, unless you're taking 5 quarterbacks.
Yeah. Some of them you should be building in additional stacks beyond the ones with your quarterbacks. I feel very strongly about that. But
yes.
So now we set ourselves up like we have a Pittsburgh thing and it's like a broken stack or whatever. Like, good. Good. We also bet on Pittsburgh to score points.
I was hoping Laporta would come back here to give us
Me
that
too.
fun double stack. That does not happen. Chig, MVS, Komet, Roshan, Alec Pierce, Stafford, Hill, DPJ, Hodgins. Anything else jump out to you?
I'd be okay taking Alec Pierce if you want to get 6 wide receiver. Roshan's hurt now, so I don't love that. I think it matters a little bit more when these rookies get hurt because they're like you're trying to make a name for themselves and not be healthy scratch. I mean, Sam Sherman's prophecy of Travis Homer being ahead of Roshan certainly looks better now that he's hurt. Honestly, I would take Foreman. I'd be totally happy to take Foreman, and then
the only other thing
running back.
The only thing I would say is if we want to bring back on the Ravens stuff, we could do Mostert, who's been ripping it up at camp.
Yeah, okay, I'm okay with that.
I mean, it's a little ahead of ADP, but I don't think he's coming back here, with an ADP of 166 and we pick at 179. So not that like we're fully shut out of Miami bringbacks, that we obviously have some gross stuff we can do, but if we're kind of like flat there, I don't mind using correlation for the tiebreaker.
Yeah. Honestly, the tiebreaker, I mean, it's not a tiebreaker over Foreman, but the Mostert has the same appeal as Foreman, where I think he's probably a better early season bet, which makes him kind of an awkward bring back. But we need that early season production with Brees. Brees isn't going to do a ton early on, so
yeah,
P. Ryan and Mostert are good RBs to have.
Yeah, FF Doom saying Mostert and A-Chain feel like such smashes right now. I continue to like all the Dolphins running backs, and I just am going to end up having more Mostert and Wilson just because the price is like meaningfully different on those guys. And it is kind of like the Swift Penny dynamic where it's like you like both of these guys. It's just harder to get Swift because the opportunity cost of Swift comparatively, the same thing like A-Chain, goes around a lot of other guys where I think you can make cases for those other guys next to A-Chain. Whereas where Mostert and Wilson go, I'm like, these guys stand out to me as the best pick in this range.
Yeah, I need to get more on Mostert. I'm about even with the field on A-Chain and Wilson, but I'm underweight on Mostert. Because my thing with Mostert was I was like, I think I like Wilson better. And then Mostert's always been ahead. He like always goes ahead. So I never really, it'd be so much easier but I don't feel that strongly about it. I'm like, you end up in these spots where like, my portfolio says I'm 5 times more confident in Jeff Wilson than Raheem Mostert.
Right.
Like, I actually don't feel that way.
Yeah. I think, what am I at? So I'm at Jeff Wilson. I'm at 15%. Mostert, I'm at 13%. And A-Chain, I'm at 9.4. I think that is like exactly where I want to be. I think if I could write down my exposures for cascading those 3, that's exactly how I'd want it.
So I just asked Britt to bring me some coffee, and she brought me it in. I didn't request that even. That's just serendipity right there.
She probably was sick of looking at it in the cupboard. It was like, let me get this out of here.
She's like, I'm not going to drink out of this, so I might as well give it to Pat.
Yes, you guys can get your Best Ball breakfast mugs. We also got, I'm rocking the coaster today
Nice.
Down there as well. If you guys are YouTube members and you're in the Discord, I have a pinned discount code too for any merch. You can get a percentage off your order. You can also always get free shipping on orders over $50 with promo code Pete. We got lots of fun merch in the Ship Chasing store as well. We got our Chasing Karain stuff. We got our new I Love Wide Receivers Piss Boy merch, all kinds of good stuff in there, Badge Bro merch. So check out the Overzet Shopify store. We'll get the link in the chat, and also it's in the description as well. All right, Jeff Wilson does come off the board at 175, Zamir White at 176. Let's see here, Pat, what we're going to do at 15-11. The team so far, Lamar and Goff. We are on the clock. What jumps out to you here?
Not a ton. I mean, we could. How many running backs do we have? We have 5, so we probably don't need another.
Yeah.
Gus,
Richie James kind of stands out to me as a pick that I think should be coming up a little bit.
I would rather. I think I'd rather do Thornton or Parker.
Okay. Well, let's take Thornton and tilt everyone who says he's having an awful camp, which is hilarious too, because the dude, all it was he was destroying OTAs, and now he's not having a good training camp. So it's like, well, which one is it? Who else? We do select Thornton here.
Are there any tight ends?
The tight ends, Jawan Johnson, Gesicki, if we want to build out a New England thing. Otherwise, it's more punty.
The answer is no. I mean, if you want to go Richie James, I'll take Richie James. He's
just another guy I feel like should be coming up a bit. We are trying to catch up at wide receiver here, although I think we did well. Alec Pierce, Tyquan Thornton, Richie James gets us 8. Yeah. So our build right now is a 2-5-8-1. So one of these next picks is for sure going to be a tight end, and then I think we could have some flexibility. Gold should be
tight end. With Frymouth as the tight end 1 and then pushing it. I think we should just grab 2.
So the team through 16, Lamar Jackson, Jared Goff at quarterback, Austin Eckler, Breece Hall, Samaje Perine, Jalen Warren, Raheem Mostert. That's a good crew of 5 running backs there. Wide receiver, Amon-Ra, Deontay Johnson, Lockett, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Alec Pierce, Tyquan Thornton, and Richie James. And then
the chat hates the Thornton pick.
Oh, I know.
Pat Thorman said he's headed to the rehab field.
Yeah. If you hate the Thornton pick, it means you're spending too much time refreshing fantasy Twitter. That's all it tells me. I have an athletic sub. I saw that screenshot of him not getting targeted. You can't select him anymore.
What does a screenshot look like of someone not getting targeted?
Yeah.
That's
Pat
amazing.
Thorman has been my storm in any Taekwon, or my port in any Taekwon storm, because he's been preaching Taekwon as the breakout and sharing all the good OTA stuff. So yeah, the Patriots do funky shit, man. Like every year with how their usage across the board. If you want to bet on or against the second year breakout, then go for it.
But is he hurt?
Isn't everyone hurt? I don't even what is it? What does the rehab field mean? I didn't even know that was a thing.
I didn't know they needed a whole field for rehab. I thought they just worked off to the side. The Patriots are so cheap that they hired Matt Patricia to be an architect and coach.
Yeah,
I mean, it maybe sell some of this land that you got. You got a whole rehab field.
It sounds like it would be something that would happen during like World War II. It's like, the army had to devote an entire field to like rehabbing the soldiers who are coming back from the battlefield.
Tyquan Thornton this morning is working out on the triage field.
Yeah. I mean, we're just like, I might as well having like literal trenches over there. Yeah, Tyquan Thornton is drinking Gatorade in a trench right now while licking his wounds.
Yeah. Tyquan Thornton just exited the bomb shelter.
So like looking through any other like correlation stuff here, we could, with the tight end stuff, you got Isaiah Likely if you wanted to triple stack him. You got Jake Ferguson as a bring back to the Detroit stuff. You could do New England tight end to play that stack without the quarterback. Anything else jump out to you?
Yeah, something does jump out to me.
Okay. Batch should probably be done here. 3 tight ends. Beach Bum has Dulcich and Jawan. Take Sam Howell. So we should be good to get our preferred 2 tight ends here.
I think Ferguson is pretty exciting to get this late.
Also plays Miami in week 16 there. So we do Freiermuth, Ferguson. Batch snaps up 2 Jets wide receivers, and we're back on the clock again.
And I think we get Likely.
Yeah. I'm definitely down for the triple stack with Lamar here at this cost. Let's do it. So this team is in the books. Fast draft here. Sub 39 minutes, and that's just when we started the show. So this draft got ripped off in close to 35 minutes.
Oh my god.
We're gonna have to vamp for a while until Shawn shows up. So this is the team now in the books here. Lamar Jackson and Jared Goff at quarterback. Austin Eckler, Breece Hall, Samaje Perine, Jalen Warren, Raheem Mostert at running back. Wide receiver, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Deontay Johnson, Tyler Lockett, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Alec Pierce, Tyquan Thornton, Richie James. Tight end, Pat Freiermuth, Jake Ferguson, Isaiah Likely. I guess it's like a thought experiment. We could see what the 2v2 look like on a Jared Goff. wide receiver versus wide receiver Kenny Pickett, pairing, because that probably would have been kind of what we were deciding on. Like it would have been like the Rashee Rice, probably. It would have probably been Rice Pickett versus like Jared Goff and, where did Pickett end up going here? 188 versus Richie James. So it is the Chiefs wide receiver, Goff, James versus Rice Pickett. Pretty close.
I think it's just Goff James because I like Goff better. But yeah, I think another sliding doors was Mostert, because we could have gone Gus Edwards there. So like Mostert versus what? Mostert. We could have taken Hodgins. Hodgins and Gus versus where did Gus go?
Gus ended up going. Has he not gone yet? No, he went. Where's Gus? Why can't I find Gus? Where are you, Gus?
Where did he go?
Why is this so hard?
Oh, he went.
There he is, 189
or 16.
Yeah.
So it's James again. So we could have gone Hodgins, Gus versus Mostert, James.
How much? Because it seems like talking to you, you are a little bit higher on Gus. How much of it that is just ... in a vacuum, or because of the uncertainty with J.K. Dobbins stuff?
I think it's mostly ... in a vacuum, because Gus is a really good rusher. Is really just what it comes down to. He's only turned in like a handful of limited samples, but they've all been good. Mm-hmm. And I think he's going to be on a team that scores a bunch of points. I think the Ravens are going to score a lot of points.
Yeah. And
so I'm just like, I've got a guy who is probably going to punch in some touchdowns. He doesn't have the most contingent value because he is not a pass catcher in any sense. But I would say he has slightly more contingent value this year, just because like they'll probably throw to the running backs like a little more. But that's not really the play you're making. You're making a play on him getting into the end zone, a decent amount on a team that's going to score a lot of points, and just running efficiently on the opportunities that he does get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I need to start IDing him a little bit more in drafts. He's one of those guys I think I have like pattern blindness to, where I'm like, I don't select this guy a ton, and so then he just is like invisible to you when he's on the clock. But I do very much think, and he can offer, in a way, he's almost kind of Jeff Wilson-esque, right? Where it's like, it's gonna be on a really good team, could just have a decently sized role right out of the gate, depending on what's going on with the other running backs, probably the goal line back. Like, that's an attractive thing that late in a draft.
Yeah, he goes so late. I mean, that's the thing for me. It's like if Gus Edwards went where Mostert goes, I'd be like, whatever. Like, it's funny, like a few rounds can make a difference with a profile like that. But when it's like him versus guys who haven't signed. And I've taken too much Fournette. So I'm like trying to cool off on that, So I'm like, who else is here? And Gus is usually there. So
what's your dream landing spot right now for Fournette with such heavy Fournette bags?
Well, the dream landing spot is probably the Chargers, but I don't really see them doing that.
Even more so than Kansas City?
Well, if like McKinnon pulled a hammy, then Kansas City is definitely the dream landing spot. But
yeah,
I think the dream landing spot is like, the nice thing about Fournette is like he's like huge and he can catch passes, and he doesn't do anything well, but he's kind of like equally bad at all things. And but he like does his thing. Like Fournette's like what you're gonna get. So he's like a kind of pretty interesting injury replacement guy. So the dream landing spot is probably starter goes down and they're like, well, we can get 80% of what we were going to get if we just signed Leonard Fournette.
Right. Yeah. And it just like, there's some really interesting game theory dynamics for some of these free agent running backs, right? Where there's like 3 different dynamics at play. 1, just how much money can you get? 2, like trying to get your preferred destination. Where do you want to play? And then 3, like, are you going to try to beat the other guys to the punch? Because like every single time one of these free agent running backs sign, there's less and less viable spots. for these guys to go. So I wonder too how some of those guys, Zeke, Fournette, Hunt, Cook, like if they're getting a little twitchy, being like, is he going to go sign with the Patriots? Is that going to ruin more of my leverage? Because now there's one less suitor for my services.
Yeah, but I think there's how many teams just like wouldn't sign you at all? You know what I mean? Like there's not that many teams that are going to like give you any decent money, but if you're Fournette, I think, or Zeke, I think you can just sit out the next week or so, see if there's a team who ends up needing a running back really badly because there was an injury. And then, you can go there. And if not, they're both playing nice with a number of other franchises. Yeah. And I'd be doing a little tour of America, visiting teams, laughing, smiling. Oh, I'd love to play here. And then, just bide your time.
Going out for dinner like Zeke with Mac Jones in the Seaport. I talked about this on Best Ball Breakfast.
Same side sitting, right?
I lost my mind with that. That was so weird. It's so weird. I think it's weird even with like when couples do it, much less two people who are getting a chance to know each other do it. That is so weird.
I sometimes do it, but sometimes same side sit. But it's for sharing the food. You can kind of do a little.
Well, there's places where it's more culturally acceptable. At a bar, you have to be next to each other because of how it works. But
sure,
if you're at a table and you two are both, and like, look, I've never had dinner with Mac Jones or Zeke. I'm just going to guess that like neither of them are like incredible conversationalists who are driving the conversation. I'm guessing that there was a lot of quiet, awkward, long pauses with them staring directly out the window together.
Dude, that is so weird. Cause like, if you're just sitting next to each other, it's a very intimate thing to be sitting next to someone with no one across from you. Like it's more like if you're there with your girlfriend or wife or whatever, and you just got your arm around and you kind of like, it's, you same side sit at home, right? You're on the couch together, your same side sitting, it shouldn't feel that weird. But I don't think Mac Jones and Zeke Elliott are plopping down side by side right on the couch. They're probably, a couch chair situation. So it's so weird.
We now have truthers here. No Bostock says, I feel like there had to have been other people at that dinner who were just in the bathroom or at the bar when the photo was taken. It's like the Nathan Fielder meme. He's like, my dinner party was just out of frame. I promise. They just
yes, all my friends are just out of frame. Here's me laughing.
Yes, Tyler, if this is what you guys, if you're tuning in to this show for the first time and you're wondering, do we draft best ball teams here? No, we talk about societal dynamics with where you sit when out to dinner. But I should mention, and I appreciate Tyler for the reminder, Pat, we are now less than 400 subs away from hitting our 15K goal. We sit right now at 14,604. I mentioned that when Pat and I did our first kickoff stream a couple months ago, I was at 12,700. So we've almost added 2,000 subs since that debut show of Hot Best Ball Summer. When I hit 15K subs, which legitimately should be within the next couple of weeks, I'm going to do a $1,500 giveaway. Anyone who leaves a comment on my draft streams gets entered. I had KH from the community built me a comment scraper. So we're going to be able to scrape all those comments, nice. Only unique entries. Yeah, it was awesome. He saved me so much time. And I have the playlist down below for all 150 of my drafts. That includes some of the Best Ball After Dark. So if you're a YouTube member, you're going to be able to sneak in a few extra entries via commenting on those. And I do imagine I will do a draft with Jacob Sanderson on Thursday's Best Ball After Dark. Pat, people were clamoring, if your computer can hold it, do you want to pull up the Dalmation draft from a while back? It's fun
sure.
to do a
yeah.
stroll. And while you're doing that too, it is every once in a while, like pulling up some of our really old drafts from earlier on. We've looked at the first draft we did and see what the second draft that I did with Pat was here. Where's the draft? Here we go. That was one. Let's see. Pat and I, my 27th, we did a Justin Herbert, Kirk Cousins. Ooh, another Austin Eckler team. There you go, Pat. We got Austin Eckler at 16 in that draft and paired him with Diggs, which is now another kind of hard combo to get there. Akers, AJ Dillon, Algier Ford. Akers at 88 looking nice there. Diggs, Keenan Allen. Man, you can't get Keenan at 40 anymore. Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, Romeo Dobbs at 129, DJ Chark, Tyquan Thornton. Oh man, Tim Patrick, rest in peace. The O. This was the team where I tried to get you to draft Terrace Marshall, and you said, "How about Laviska?" And then we did Laviska, and then Mark Andrews and Gerald Everett there.
We need Laviska on this team. With Tim Patrick out, we need Laviska.
All right, Pat, zoom in on this this team here. So this is the triple bye in the Dalmation. Dak Prescott, Aaron Rodgers, CJ Stroud, 3 week 7 buys.
Here we go. So yeah, Dak Prescott 3. Yeah. So Brees Hall, Alexander Madison, pick 84. Damon Pierce, pick 85. It's rare you get like 2 fallers at huge values. Jalen Warren, pick 133 into that. Cordell Patterson we did for Ben as a tribute to Ben, who wasn't on that one. I think maybe that's when he was on vacation, just doing a ton of puppies or whatever.
Yeah.
Let's see. We went Amon-Ra Waddle to start. We got London, Deontay, Mike Evans, Michael Gallup, Mecole Hardman. So we have a couple week 7 buys here with the receivers. Schultz, Laporta, and Conklin. We have 2 week 7 buys at tight end as well. So it's going to be a little tough to score points in week 7. So let me zoom back out. So this was the decision point here where we had Stroud falling and we had him with Schultz. So it was a little bit kind of like, all right, let's scoop this value. But we also had Drake London. And so Ritter is, I think, who you were eyeing. And I was like, dude, we got to go Schultz or we got to go Stroud. And
I know. I remember being so tilted. Speaking of bye week, so my guy Lou Dog, we just wrapped up yesterday. The Best Ball Dateable submissions were due. We had a bunch come in, and our guy Lou Dog, after taking the Fantasy Data Pros course on learning Python for fantasy football, he used his newfound fantasy coding skills to tackle the problem: do bye weeks matter as it pertains to Best Ball Mania data? And he did show me and tag me after yesterday's Best Ball Breakfast. Peter Overzet might want to close his eyes for this graphic. 3 quarterbacks with the same bye. We basically cut our advance rate in half here, Pat. So we have a tough hill to climb with our three bye week QBs.
Yeah, but the rest of the team's so good that I think we're fine. And then
exactly,
it's unique.
Yeah,
think about that.
Exactly. I mean, just imagine getting that team through. And, 10%, I mean, you're still talking about a pretty nice chance right there. All right. 10%. I don't need the Leonis of the world telling me, how much a 7% drop off in advance rate is actually hurting my ROI over the length of my lifespan. Just tell me there's a chance, a 10% chance to get this one through. But on the Best Ball Dateable front, we're going to be huddling soon. We're actually reviewing all the submissions. We're going to be ranking them. We're going to narrow it down to 5 finalists, which we'll announce, and then invite those guys to come on a show and present. And then we'll be announcing the winner of the inaugural Best Ball Dateable. And I will say, one of the cool things about this, some people were asking, like, how do you go and view this? You can go view any of these submissions. It's all publicly available on the Best Ball Dateable GitHub, which I can drop in the link here. And you can go through and check out all of these submissions. I was going through them yesterday. There's some really, really cool stuff there. And actually a couple new ones I need to check out as well. Someone was actually looking at wide receiver avalanche dynamics for their Best Ball submission, Pat. So some really good stuff in there.
That's awesome, man. It's such a cool project. I'm excited to learn more about the submissions.
Yeah, and if you guys have questions about the Fantasy Data Pros course, you can ask me, you can ask Lou, who can give you a firsthand testimonial, and you can also always get 25% off that course with promo code Pete. And it is pretty incredible. Like, Lou's a very smart, talented dude who picks things up easily, so I don't want to undersell that. But, a couple months ago, he could not do those things, and now he's, putting out actual, very actionable Best Ball data, advice and strategy pieces, thanks to taking that course, and thought he did an awesome job with the visuals and stuff there. Pat,
yeah, I want to take it myself. I need to carve some time out, and probably looking at January now, but I would like to take it.
Speaking of what you're working on now, I know you keep teasing a big tight end article centered on Mark Andrews. When is that coming out?
I'm hoping to get that out this week. I have a little. I'm gonna write like a little short post that I'm hoping to get out this week as well. On just to like, I think it's a like very simple point, but just like taking a little bit more risk with your bringbacks. Like if we're trying to, like, how are we? I've been trying to think through like some of these training camp risers and dudes that like I'm not even sure about, right? Like a Justin Ross, like. Should I really be taking Justin Ross? Like, take him as a bring back. Like, I think that's how we should start to be working in those players into our portfolio, because you're betting on a single game in week 17. That's all you're betting on. So if you're gonna, I mean, that's a risky thing to get right anyway. So you might as well kind of take that. You know, you're betting on a game December 31st, so going for rookies, going for players who might need more time to work in, going for contingent running backs, whatever. I think it's all going to slightly be like a better bet as a bring back anyway, and it just helps you like incorporate those dudes into your portfolio.
I couldn't agree more. And it's funny you say that because I've been doing for Fantasy Life this summer school best ball series. We're kind of doing a little bit more like pulling back and trying to bring people along who aren't as steeped in best ball. And the one I'm doing for this Friday is on the week 17 stuff, and, you know, rethinking about it through the lens of this year compared to last year. And it's been a really good exercise for me to re-articulate the things and how I feel about them a year later. And one of the things I just got done writing about for that piece was like thinking about correlation on a sliding scale. And the further you get into the draft, the more I want to be prioritizing correlation for the exact reasons you described, where it's like, I know Tyreek Hill can go off in any game environment. It's the Justin Ross who's going to need the stars to align, the game environment, the opponents, all of that to have a score that you use. And I think if you think about correlation in that way and use it as the ultimate tiebreaker late in drafts, it really is the way to do it.
Yeah, for sure. I'll also shout out your wide receiver avalanche video, which I was late to the party on, but just watched that yesterday. And anyone who hasn't watched it, you should. It's very good. And I'll be on the Road World podcast on Thursday. I'll also note that, is Casey points out, the real big news. I was informed that I would be on the Road World podcast by listening to the Road World podcast. They're like, Pat Crane will be joining us this Thursday. And I was like, I've literally not, for weeks, they were like, I think Pat Crane's going to join us one of these Thursdays. And then they're just like, he's joining us this Thursday. I was like, I still haven't been told or invited on the show, but luckily I am free on Thursday. So I'll be joining.
Yeah, you guys should check out. So Pat has his legendary Upside YouTube channel and podcast feed. I have the YouTube link down below. I had just started listening to your podcast with the Roto World crew, a very fun crew there, Roto Pat and Denny. Like, Denny had a period where he was just laughing for like 3 minutes straight. So if you want to see some good podcast chemistry, check that one out. And yes, I appreciate you shouting out the wide receiver avalanche video that is up on the Deposit Kingdom YouTube. I have that linked, I think, pinned in the chat and also in the description. It is a separate YouTube channel, so I know everyone who's subscribed over here doesn't always see it, but if you guys subscribe to that channel, check out this video here. It's where I also did last year's week 17 video, and I will be working on a best ball guys update as well. But go over there, check out that how to combat a wide receiver avalanche video, get subscribed to that channel. Appreciate it. Pat,
the entire industry is nervous about the best ball guys video, I have to say. There's a
Who
little,
is?
The entire industry. There's just like this
industry?
little current. Yeah, sometimes like we'll just all be at a party and someone will mention that Pete's best ball guys videos in production, and there's just a silence. Just a silence takes over the room.
If it makes anyone feel better, I'm going to be the target of my own parody in a lot of ways. So no one is safe, including myself. Everyone gets made fun of in this year's Best Ball Bros video. Pat, always a pleasure drafting with you. I will catch you later tonight on ship chasing when we're doing a 34 round draft. So go rest up for that.
All right, man. See you then.
All right. Next up, we got the Best Ball Banana Stand with Shawn Siegel. right. We got RotoViz's Shawn Siegel. I'm Peter Overzet. This is the Best Ball Banana Stand, where every single Wednesday, Shawn and I jump in a Best Ball Mania 4 draft as we try to take down that $3 million tournament prize and that $500,000 regular season prize while we're at it. Shawn, how are you doing today?
Good. I've been thinking about some of our recent teams and thinking about how to combat that wide receiver avalanche. As you mentioned, obviously excited about that video that you and Pat were just referencing there. And yeah, I feel pretty good about some of the teams we drafted recently and also have some ideas for how we can tweak things and keep putting the pressure on. So I still think one of these drafts is going to be the $3 million one.
Are you getting it all spooked in that it was so crazy how it seemed like the way the ADP landscape and our specific rooms were driving us in a lot of these drafts were to get guys like Jonathan Taylor, Ramondre Stevenson, Breece Hall, at the 2-3 turn. Sometimes they've been falling to the mid to the late third. Now, all of a sudden, you have all these question marks introduced with whether it's, incoming free agents, potential holdout situations. Are you feeling any more queasy about those selections where they're going, or has nothing really changed for you as far as what they offer on like a season long, projection standpoint?
I don't think anything has really changed. I mean, you don't like to make your picks. And certainly, I had the Breece Hall article come out. Things were looking pretty good at that moment. And then I felt like I jinxed him because very quickly it seemed like things had turned and perhaps, we'd be in a weaker state there. And yet when you look at those guys, the biggest thing here, I think it offers a reminder for us that the running back position in so many ways is even more fragile than it seems on the surface. And that these guys may be dealing with some team situations that are tougher than wide receivers, for example, who, everybody wants the best guys there. They feel like that is the necessity for winning a Super Bowl, for having a team that can get to kind of the Final Four, put yourself in contention to win a Super Bowl, that type of thing. You're not going to be a Jonathan Taylor type of talent, Saquon, Josh Jacobs, and have your teams be like, yeah, we're going to stare you down to the very end. You're trying to keep those guys happy and go, and maybe you'll trade multiple first-round picks and pay them $100 million. It's just so different there. You're always a little bit scared that another Le'Veon Bell situation could be in the offing. But really, probably the biggest problem is just that now some of these teams that do start with two really good receivers at the 1-2 turn could now potentially put together a team with a Jonathan Taylor, some of those other types of guys, Ramondre, Breece, and have, once the season actually rolls around, have this team where you're looking like, that's 4 first-round picks. And so will it be difficult to defeat some of those teams depending on how it works out? It could be, but basically I still feel a lot of optimism for the most talented players. That's what we have to target, and then sort of let the chips fall where they may.
Well, speaking of teams from the 112, Shawn, I hopped in a Best Ball Mania draft for us, tipped guys off in the Discord. There were a couple spots remaining. We do get the 112, which, I've been joking on the streams lately, Shawn, that I've just been living at the back end of the draft board. And it's one of these things where I don't even think that's bad considering some of these ADP dynamics. Right now, I kind of like it. I'm just getting a little bored with the late draft slots. However, you and I have been actually drafting mainly from the top of the board. We have Cooper Kupp shares. So I'm actually excited to see what we can cook up here from the 1-2 turn, because I know some of your Galaxy Brain ideas might be in play here. I'm ready for a Shawn adventure.
Well, it should be fun. We're in such a crazy time right now. We get puff pieces on almost every player in the NFL. If you're really high on a guy right now and the people covering the team are like, oh, he can't play, that feels weird because everybody else is the greatest player of all time. So yeah, I'm excited to do this draft from the back. As you mentioned, I feel like we have at least one of all 5 of the top guys and then several shares of several of them. So this will be a very nice change in terms of our duo drafts.
I'd asked Pat this before Cooper Kupp falls to 7. Do you think that's appropriate with this new injury? Or are you still happy to take him, in the 1-4, 1-5 range?
I basically use those things as tiebreakers right now when there's some uncertainty and, maybe you just take a couple days. Like I mentioned the Breece Hall article, put out an article saying draft Garrett Wilson in the first round. You got to take him. And then instantly, he's injured. And so I had to put a little disclaimer in there, like maybe wait a couple days. But that's mostly what we're talking about. Just wait a couple days and make sure the guy's all right.
Well, speaking of Garrett Wilson, I do have your RotoViz blended ranks pulled up here. Garrett Wilson, the top guy on the board. We're on the clock here at the turn. Lamb, still have Taylor high up here. Waddle, Amon-Ra. I assume Garrett Wilson is the pick.
Yeah, let's go that direction. He gives us such immense upside there. I mean, I think that we can probably look at Wilson and Lamb as pretty similar talents. Obviously, Lamb slightly more proven, and yet I think when you look at the two offenses, the two guys, probably Wilson has the more upside. And then I'll move Taylor down kind of as we go through this. I don't think he's the right pick for us here, obviously. Waddle, Amon-Ra, those would probably be the two guys I'd be most interested in kind of pairing up here. Do you have a preference?
Let's do Waddle. I've been trying to get a little bit more. You have been getting me hyped on Waddle a lot. And I do think it's probably a bit more of a unique pairing. Just because you're essentially, for most of the drafting season, you're spending your 112 on 2 second round picks just based on ADP wise. So, Pat and I just did an Eckler Amon-Ra team that felt a little unique relative to where those ADPs are paired. So I know Waddle had been a guy you've been experimenting with some reaches and stuff here. Why don't you just talk to me about why you are so excited about him this year?
Yeah, I think that Waddle, when you look at his profile, the thing that really jumps out is that the target per route numbers for Waddle versus Hill are actually still very far apart. And Hill was able to grab so much of the volume. That's obviously a very positive sign for Tyreek Hill, who, I think there's an argument for taking him certainly 102, if not 101. I prefer to play it through the cheaper player, even though basically both guys are going, with very, very high value picks. But even with that, you look at Waddle's efficiency then and his yard per route numbers extremely high. You look at him just from sort of a more global perspective. And since he's come into the league, only 8 guys have outscored him. We're talking about a player's first 2 seasons, right? And then you look at, even bring out the game splits app, and with Tua, without Tua, games that Tua really played in, you have a very big difference. One of the things with both Hill and Waddle is that, yeah, they're very efficient, and there are still actually little pieces of the puzzle that could push them further. And we're not necessarily saying they're going to be more efficient than they were, but when we talk about balancing out some of the regression, things like that people worry about, they're actually, positive forces pushing them in the other direction. You have the potential for the QB to stay healthy. Both of those guys actually were a little bit down in terms of route percentage over the other top players. And so the targets are so concentrated and the work that they have to do per route is so intense that I guess I wouldn't expect their route numbers to jump into that route range that you get from, the guys who are in the top 4 or 5. But if their routes even jumped a little bit, again, you're talking about things that could push them to the top. I think that Waddle probably should be valued in the middle of the first round. And it's kind of fun to start here. Wilson and Waddle were my round 1 and round 2 picks in that article. Hopefully they turn out to be pretty good values. And one of the things I was kind of suggesting to do is that if you draft Waddle in the middle of the first, you get one of these guys in the second that you can't get with him if you're not taking him in the first. And then if Mark Andrews falls through to you. But one of the things that I've seen kind of since I pitched that to some people is Andrews in the drafts I've been in is going early enough that he's not falling back to that spot. So maybe you just play him the way that you want to play him as a good value. Don't worry too much about creating the big reaches. But either way you look at it, I really like Waddle as a value.
Yeah. And I think I now that we've flipped the calendar to August, I am ready to start thinking about some of those unique pairings, specifically in the first couple of rounds, because, I think early on in draft season, when there is a lot of ADP shuffling, you can get in trouble getting a little cute. And then there's teams that do end up building better teams with the same players because the ADP settles in a way that it makes that possible. But as ADP solidifies here a bit, I do think it's worth thinking through that. And, to me, this is like a really nice landscape for it because it is really flat, I think, in a lot of ways from, say, like pick 4 or 5 all the way to pick, 24 or 25, if you include, all the different positions. So figuring out, what are the combinations within those top 25 players that you're not sacrificing projected points when you reach or even upside scenarios, but you're getting unique combos. That is definitely something I like to think through. And I'm excited to kind of talk that through with you as we continue drafting through the rest of August. So Shawn and I do start our team with Garrett Wilson and Jalen Waddle. We are about to pick at the 312 here. We see some of these running backs coming off the board: Josh Jacobs, Ramondre Stevenson, Breece Hall. No Jonathan Taylor discount in this room. You know, he goes at 22. I have been seeing some screenshots of him going at, you know, pick 25, pick 26 here. Mark Andrews would have been fun if he fell all the way back to us at the 3-4 turn. He goes pick 34. And we are about to be on the clock at 312. Best available according to the ranks here: Jahmyr Gibbs, Jerry Jeudy, Travis Etienne, Godwin, Kenneth Walker. We'll see what BZ does here. Shawn, how are you feeling about this 3-4 turn?
Well, I see my rankings here, and why be halfway, and why not move, you know, JSN into the middle of the third round of my rankings? No, I mean, Gibbs would be fun here. Obviously, if you're able to get Keenan Allen coming all the way back there, that would have been the pick. Jerry Jeudy maybe gets loosened up a little bit with the really sad Tim Patrick news. Those would probably be the ways I would kind of lean. I mean, I have Godwin and JSN as the other two kind of receiver options there, but ADP, it doesn't really suggest that we should be considering him in this range.
So do you like the Gibbs Jeudy double tap here?
I do.
Yeah. Let's do Gibbs Jeudy. I wanted to ask you about Jeudy and Keenan, specific to something like, because one thing I do know, and you even mentioned it when you mentioned Waddle, and it's something we've talked about on the show a little bit, of playing these offenses through the cheaper pieces. But I do know, with how high you are on Keenan and Jeudy, those are the most expensive wide receiver options on those teams. But you seem very willing to play the offense through those two when there are, you know, I think you could argue some viable, cheaper ways to play those offenses. So I'm just kind of curious how you go about applying wanting to play offenses through the cheaper pieces. Obviously, you got to take some players with your early picks who are the best players on their team, but I just was wondering how you think that through.
Yeah, so it kind of also goes back to our discussion last week a little bit about how concentrated you want to be. And there are obviously strengths and weaknesses to that. There are positives. There are obviously some pretty negative trade-offs. You know, if you're really high on Breece Hall, like I was last year, and he gets hurt, and then it puts a hole in not just some rosters, but in quite a few. When we're looking at these second, third, fourth round wide receivers, and specifically, I think for these wide receiver avalanche drafts, the end of the second, and then really through the third and the fourth, I don't have a lot of targets that I feel that comfortable with. I think the receivers there tend to be pushed up because they're either solid profiles in good offenses, or they are good profiles in bad offenses. Both of those things are actually pretty tricky, because what we're trying to find are scenarios where, or situations where the scenario is priced to our advantage, as opposed to the other way around. Or instead of hoping that someone is able to like take a step forward in their career, or hoping that someone's able to defeat a bad offense, we really want to have almost everything about our thesis pointing in the same direction when we're making these picks. And so if we can find some guys where that's more or less the case early, and we believe that the player is a big time talent and really is separated from his teammates, those are the guys I'm trying to get a lot of exposure to early, so that then I can come back around and take these guys who are risky, who are breakouts, who maybe are a little bit post-hype. I mean, talk about someone like an Elijah Moore or even a Romeo Doubs. I mean, Romeo Doubs kind of both a post-hype and a breakout, in that, I mean, there were reasons to be excited about it last year, and they just didn't exactly come to fruition, maybe because of himself, maybe because of injuries, maybe because of Aaron Rodgers, and maybe, I mean, I guess I started with himself, but maybe he just is gapped down talent-wise from Christian Watson and isn't going to be much more than just a guy, which, again, we're trying to avoid that profile as often as we can. I think that in this case, and I've kind of mentioned it on past shows, but there are three different very strong cases for Jeudy when you look back at his seasons in the NFL, and yet there are quite a few red flags. And so if someone wanted to argue that my point about everything about the thesis pointing in the same direction, maybe that doesn't apply to Jerry Jeudy, I mean, I would accept that. And certainly you can play Marvin Mims. And again, all of those things, I think, become a little bit easier to do again now, when a guy who is just potentially in a really good position is taken out of the mix there. The thing that had become so disturbing about the Broncos was just how diverse that offense might end up being. So now back a little bit on Judy. Is that the way that you're thinking through Judy as well? I mean, I have him ranked pretty high, but I had been scared off of him for like a 2.5 week period.
I mean, Judy does feel relatively insulated as far as, how he's going to be used. I think the stuff, when you introduce Tim Patrick, right, then it starts to muddle like, oh, is he going to, take away from Cortland Sutton on the outside? Is he going to, force his way onto the field in 3 wide receiver sets and keep Marvin Mims off the field? I think those were kind of the concerns where it's like Judy to me is always going to be a fixture in basically any wide receiver set configuration for the Broncos. So I do think that gives him, more to hang his hat on. Whereas now I do think this Tim Patrick, injury cleans things up a little bit for Mims, for Sutton, for Dulcich in a way where it did seem like it could get legitimately messy there on the back end.
Yeah, I definitely hope you're right. And that is the thesis that makes sense to me. Every once in a while, you see NFL coaches are not quite on the same page. But yeah, I would completely agree with that.
So JSN does go at 5'8". We got our guy Copper in the chat building out a mega Chargers stack here with Herbert, Eckler, Keenan, and Mike Dubb. We are about to pick at the 5-6 turn. Our team so far, Jahmyr Gibbs, our lone running back, and 3 wide receivers, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, Jerry Jeudy, Chris Godwin, and Marquise Brown come off the board. We got some guys here that you are have aggressively ranked kind of relative to ADP. So lots of different ways we could go here. What do you think?
Yeah, if you are comfortable going Dotson, Dobbins, that would be interesting. I mean, Dobbins, somebody you probably get cheaper. You want to go a little bit further down the wide receiver ranks there for the second pick and see where we're.
I'm going to grab Dotson for us here. We're on the clock for this second pick. So it's basically deciding between Dobbins or another one of these wide receivers. Do you have a preference?
Well, we could get a little Mike Evans. That's not very fun. There have been some reports that he is, doing well with their weird quarterback situation. So it might be a fun little piece to buy. I have a lot of Godwin. And so to balance that out a little bit in a situation where, it does seem like, I guess I'm more optimistic about just how the volume has to work through Tampa Bay and how good Godwin are and how good Evans is. So, you look at those two guys and we talk about good receivers and bad offenses, but what are their prices? And once you have players like Godwin and Evans who are down here at the 5-6 turn, it would have been more fun if Godwin had made it a couple more picks. But you're talking about still elite players. One of the things with Godwin is that, he's talking about how he wasn't anywhere close to 100% last season. He's just trying to get through the year. Godwin is a huge talent, somebody who, I personally don't understand Godwin going behind someone like Mike Williams, especially when we're already hearing that Quentin Johnston is maybe the best receiver at camp. And so when you're looking at those types of elements, then, I think you got to lean into the best guy, especially if it's going to be just the two. I think that Tampa Bay could be one of these teams that is almost a little bit weird in the just completely modern landscape where one of the things that was so frustrating about last season is you have a lot of the bad teams leaning into the run. Ben and I just did a really long podcast talking about the trends from 2022. They're going to have a big impact on 2023. I want to see some teams that instead of saying, okay, well, you're playing a run front against us and we're going to run efficiently into it and just be happy to lose in a way that is less embarrassing. Some teams that are going to go out there and chuck it, and you have true garbage time for some teams. I think that if there's a team that is likely to have actual garbage time in the way we used to think about it, it's going to be a team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. When you throw Chris Godwin and Mike Evans into that mix, you have a real chance for points that crush kind of this ADP situation that they're in here. And especially someone like a Mike Evans, when you think about the touchdown potential and you think about single week spikes, you think of what happened, down the stretch last season in a wide receiver avalanche in round 6 to get Mike Evans, even though, Pete, that a player's got to be awfully good if I'm going to draft him at that age. I think it's an interesting guy to kind of feather in there.
I wanted to ask you too, we mentioned Dobbins, but you didn't bring up either of the tight ends. We see Waller go off ahead of Pitts and Kittle, which normally doesn't happen. Kittle slides all the way to 69. Kyle Pitts still on the board. Where are you at kind of with, let's call it the mid elite tight end tier. It seems like that was Pitts not being in consideration. Was that because wide receiver avalanche dynamics? Was that because of concern with maybe his health right now? I'm kind of curious how you were thinking about those plays as Pitts does come off the board here at 71.
Yeah, one of the reasons I have very little Drake London is that, I mean, it seems like if you're okay playing that offense just at all, that you probably need to play it through the cheaper piece who also gives you a potential trump card at a position that is a little bit trickier to fill. And it's not necessarily tricky to fill from, this big picture perspective where we have a lot of compelling late tight ends, I think we should say, for 2023. And we know that in underdog, you can attack it with 3 or even 4 of them. But if you got the kind of season that we're thinking about sort of from a scenario-based perspective for London or Pitts, and if you have those guys, even remotely close together in terms of how you see them, you should go with the guy who can fill this position that is going to be very dynamic for you, really almost give you an extra starting lineup spot and is less expensive. So I think Pitts would have been a very good choice where we were there. It's tricky for me, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on sort of playing this Falcons-Bears situation. I don't think those guys are that aggressively priced other than maybe London, and yet everything that needs to go right to make that work seems difficult, even though I expect both teams to take a pretty big step. So I'm thinking if I expect both teams to take a jump, why wouldn't I be playing them off of each other a little bit more? I had a situation the other day where London was below ADP, DJ Moore was below ADP. They come there together. I draft them both. And then you look at your team at the end and you're like, I kind of feel like even though it made sense tactically that it broke my team. And so that game has been difficult for me to really work through.
When you talk about playing offenses through the cheaper piece and saying like, yeah, I prefer to be heavier on Pitts versus London. Like if you could write down your exposures, just how it ends up, like how extreme are you willing to be? Like, is it still something where you would want to be like, even on the field in London or slightly underweight and like double the field? Or are you willing to like push it to the extremes? Like I'm okay to have 25% Pitts and 0% London. I'm just trying to think through like those extremes there.
Well, in a case like that, I would be high enough on both pieces where I would be above on London as well, but just very extreme on Pitts. And then it would depend a little bit on, if I got to 50 teams or if I got to 100 teams or if I got to 150 teams, it's probably going to water down the top end a little bit. But I go pretty high on those top guys.
Makes sense. We're about to pick at the 7-8 turn. Dallas Goedert falls around here. We also got Javonte Williams, who's probably mispriced relative to the new news. Anything else jump out to you? You could do Tua's maybe comes back, maybe doesn't. The Tyreek Hill drafter might scoop him up. What do you think our play is here?
Let's take one of those 2 running backs, whichever one you prefer.
Let's do Javonte. We kind of a little bet here on the Broncos. I've been wanting to grab a little bit of him before he rises up too much. And then what do you think the second play is?
So I think the second play, James Cook really seems positioned to be a monster. But Dallas Goedert, I think, is weird, where if people believe in that Eagles offense to the point where the receivers are going where they're going, this is an easy way to get a lot of potential tight end points. He stays healthy. Again, it's a very similar argument to Pitts, where it's such an easy pick. I think these are both great options.
Yeah, let's take what I feel is a bit more rare, and that's Dallas Goedert here sliding almost around past ADP. You and I don't seem to ever struggle to get James Cook. And I do think, if I think through like risers and stuff, like it does seem, I don't know what it would take for, I guess James Cook could rise in ADP, but I don't envision like a Dameon Pierce situation with him where like the market ever gets full-blown confidence that he's the lead back. So just thinking through, like if he hovers in this range for most of drafting season, which I kind of think he does, I don't mind breaking ties in favor of the ADP faller there. I don't know if that logic tracks for you though.
No, I think it makes sense. And I think that the incentives that we're being given and the trade-offs that we have to really consider this year are, if you have these running back values that are pretty absurd, like how much do you put of those in each individual team? Because it can be very tempting to take too many of them in one draft. And then you get to the end of the draft and you're like, the balance positionally early just didn't quite work out the way it needs to work out to build a team that not only is going to be in great shape to win the league, and I think that your chance to win the league is going to be extremely high, but then to matriculate through the playoffs there and to be in the right spot for the final week. I think that Dallas Goedert potentially gives us more upside there. I guess I wouldn't be surprised to see James Cook rise. In my article out yesterday, I did predict that I think he'll go up about a round. And
okay,
they're talking about him in a very enthusiastic way. And I think that you mix that with some of the things that he put out there statistically last year and how I think that the Bills might evolve a little bit. One of the things, it was interesting because these drafts that we do and that we talk about stand out so clearly to me. And so I'm thinking in my head, I've got James Cook ranked like 15 spots ahead of ADP. And Pete and I take him in every draft. And when I go into my personal exposures and I write about it in the article, it's going to be like 35% or something like that. I go in there and I was devastated. It wasn't nearly as high as I wanted it to be on my personal exposure. Like, I'm to start really drafting James Cook on my own teams here. So that part is kind of funny because you and I have taken him together a lot.
That what was funny is before you said the 35% thing, I was going to say, Shawn, blink twice if your James Cook exposure is over 30%. But it sounds like you have a little bit of work to do to get it up there.
I do.
You definitely get me hyped on James Cook. I'm at 19% there, so definitely have a heavy position. I think I could easily see him end up staying near the top there as far as my most drafted players. Let's recap this team here because this is a fun one. Definitely a different build than we've done before. We got Jahmyr Gibbs and Javonte Williams at running back. We got our 5 wide receivers here: Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, Jerry Jeudy, Jahan Dotson, and Mike Evans. And then we got our tight end, Dallas Goedert here. I like how this team is shaping up, Shawn.
Yeah, it doesn't always go this smoothly from the back, even though the back, I think, does. The thing that we've always been dealing with and discussing on these drafts is what do you do when you are at the 2-3 turn from the front and the wide receivers aren't there? It's nice not to have to work through that. But even then, the back doesn't always work as nicely as it has for us in this draft. I love getting Javonte there. I love getting the tight end. If we'd been able to draft a sexier piece than Mike Evans, I mean, that would really put it over the top. But one of the things I always try to remind myself when there's a pick that makes a lot of sense that I'm kind of backed into is, I mean, sometimes that's the pick that actually makes the whole team that makes it in the tournament. And so, I really like where we are here, and it'll be interesting to see how the players fall. Obviously, we're going to, I was trying not to say the name of Tua. He does get picked there now at the 903.
By the Hill drafter. I thought it was pretty unlikely that the Hill drafter would pass on him twice with no other QBs.
Yeah, so you always have that chance. One of the things that I've written about at some length, and I don't know that we're quite as well set up for in this draft as in some, but from the back especially, you can set up a lot of different quarterbacks, and then you can push them. And so my quarterback sort of relative to ADP exposure is a very good ADP values. And I think that if you are sometimes going to reach a little bit at wide receiver to make sure you have the overall builds and you're setting things up the right way, you want to have good values relative to ADP in your running backs and especially in your quarterbacks. You can do things early to make that much more likely than if you are feeling under pressure throughout the draft because of how you started.
Yep. Appreciate Charles here. 413 watching, only 112 likes. Let's get the likes up here. We are also pushing to get to 15K subs, less than 400 away. Would love to hit that milestone, do that $1,500 giveaway. That is for those of you watching here on the YouTube channel. If you guys are listening or would like to check out the audio versions of these are on the RotoViz airwaves. We do post all of these as well on the RotoViz Best Ball feed. Make sure you guys get subscribed to that so you get all of the other great RotoViz podcasts, including Stealing Bananas with Ben Gretchen, Shawn. You got RotoViz Overtime, all kinds of good stuff. We are on the clock here. Dobbs, A-Chain, Fryermuth, P. Ryan at the top here. What do you think our play is, Shawn?
Well, we could go back with Fryermuth and get that second borderline elite tight end. That I think is a pretty interesting play here from sort of a tournament perspective, especially if we feel like we can push the QBs a little bit. Do you have either a different pick? Well, we're going to go ahead and take that one. On the second pick here, I think that A-Chain is a lot of fun and is going to be a big riser. He doesn't fit what I was just talking about, where you want to get your running backs at an ADP discount. We could go with Dobbs here. I don't know that we're under any pressure at wide receiver. A variety of points. We want to make a fun pick. Who do you like in this spot?
Let's do A-Chain. We missed out on Tua, but we can still build out our Dolphins bet here. I do think, once the Dalvin Cook inevitably doesn't end up in Miami, I do think we'll see all of these guys shoot up. I was actually talking about my Dolphins exposure with Pat, where I'm at like 9% A-Chain, 14% Mostert, and 16% Wilson, where I basically have it cascaded by price. And similar to kind of like the DeAndre Swift dynamic, I love that first back, but just the opportunity cost has always felt a little stronger. So I haven't been able to get to that guy as much. So I do like the intentionality of being like, no, let's go get this guy, even though there are, arbitrage pieces later in a draft.
And yeah, those other two backs are very good, especially when you consider the fit. Sometimes with the backs, I would prefer for them to be more expensive and for A-Chain to be cheaper, obviously. Sometimes with the backs, and you're trying to think of like what's going to work best from a zero RB perspective. Obviously, we've got some other backs. It's not like A-Chain is our first shot at the things here, but this extremely wide range of outcomes player, a player with crazy speed. Now, Mostert obviously is a speed back as well. He's someone who can break all of those long touchdowns for you. He's gone off on stretches in the past in his career where he's done that. I just think back to, again, kind of where I don't understand the Cook stuff with them. I don't understand it with the Jets and the Patriots either. So I guess I don't understand any of the thing there. But I mean, you look at what they needed, where they were with draft capital, considering some of the other things that had happened. And I mean, they reached out and got that guy. I've noted that I think there are some parts of his profile that maybe weren't quite as good as you would really like if you were going to be all in on somebody, especially someone who is that small. And yet it really feels like they're setting him up to be the next Chris Johnson, or at least that's kind of how they envision him. That was the reason they made the pick. And it's just like, I mean, the coaches are just like the rest of us, where there's this human need to do the most fun thing and the most emotionally gratifying thing. And A-Chain is going to be that. So if he shows that he can do it, I mean, he's going to get those chances.
Yeah, no, I love that too. And that what you said is like, it's a simple point, but it's also like worth emphasizing that these guys, when they look at these prospects, right, they are imagining the most idealized version of that player and how it could fit in their offense and what it could do for the offense. It's not hard to look at a guy like, Shanahan, or, a disciple from Shanahan here, and Mike McDaniel, and see how he wants to use these running backs, these home run hitters, and not get very excited about this offense. And it just seems like there is room for any of these guys to really smash their ADP, but A-Chain remains the one who could just really set things on fire. So yes, you got me excited about A-Chain. And I do, I did it with Swift in a draft yesterday, but just making sure I'm, it's easy to be like, all right, I'll play it through Penny. I'll play it through the cheaper guys, but I do not want to end up underweight two guys like Swift and A-Chain just because of where their counterparts go in drafts. So it's a good note there to make sure you're getting your shares.
As we kind of look back through here too, I'm excited about how maybe this next stretch has gone, the 10, 11. There are names that should be going in that range, names that'll do good things for teams, but also names that we're not necessarily targeting coming off the board, hopefully putting us in pretty good position here for the 11, 12.
Yeah, and we could have some of those dynamics too with quarterbacks dropping a bit in this range. As far as like surveying this landscape, I don't see anything like too out of the ordinary as far as this being like an avalanche draft. You do get a bit of a P. Ryan slip, which we're starting to see happening. Obviously, a Zach Charbonnet slip starting to happen with his shoulder injury. But otherwise, this draft feels pretty firmly on pace. Romeo Dobbs does go slightly early, which is that's a feature, not a bug of a Shawn Siegel draft here. But we are heading toward our pick at the 11-12 turn. I'll recap our team here for the audio listeners. Still no quarterbacks yet. We got 3 running backs, 2 rookies, Jahmyr Gibbs and Devon Achane, along with Javonte Williams. Our wide receivers, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, Jerry Jeudy, Jahan Dotson, and Mike Evans. Solid 5 right there. And then a nice tight end room here, Dallas Goedert and Pat Freiermuth. I did a Kyle Pitts, Pat Freiermuth team on the other day. I don't know if that was yesterday or Monday, but fun to get 2 solid tight ends there. What are you seeing here for this selection at the 11-12 turn?
Well, I think we can look at the quarterbacks in a huge percentage of my drafts, or a high percentage, I should say. I have both sides of Washington and San Francisco and both sides of Pittsburgh, Seattle. So I have it set up with other outs at QB where it's game stacked, and I try and pivot away from those 2 guys a little bit when it's not fully game stacked, just because my percentage exposures are already so high to those players. So I think that, going through the other QBs here would potentially make some sense, but we do have some outs later if we still want to stick to those guys. Jaylen Warren, I think, is pretty interesting. Russell Wilson is a guy we can do if you like that. I mean, I think we can go with Wilson and Rodgers if we want here, and we kind of have that set and we're good to go.
So Rodgers did go the pick before.
Right.
Yeah, he snuck that in at the last second, had to get that Lazard stack, which has happened to me a couple times. I assume that will push us to lock up 1 QB here and grab Russ.
No, yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, it's funny that happened, Shawn, because that happened to me yesterday. Very similar spot where I feel pretty comfortable pushing Rodgers to this turn when you have Garrett Wilson, because I don't know, and for you, but for me, it's like 70-80% of the time he comes back. But I've started to notice this happening. The Lazard drafter will grab those guys back to back to lock up that stack. So sometimes it doesn't play out.
One of the things that did catch me off guard a little bit. One of the things that I have done successfully multiple times actually is to set that up, and even set it up with both Wilson and Elijah Moore, which I don't think was really ever a legitimate option for us today, but something I like to do. But still push Rodgers to the 13-14 turn and have gotten him there. Are we getting Lazard buzz that would justify that type of move?
No, I have not heard it. Maybe the chat can let us know. Is there any Allen Lazard buzz that we're missing here? I haven't seen it. To me, I think I've taken Lazard a couple times as like a big faller in rooms where I prioritize running back earlier, but otherwise, I have not seen the appeal of the Allen Lazard. Kevin says there will never be Lazard buzz. I think the buzz began and ended when Aaron Rodgers brought in his old buddy from his old team. And I think that was the end of it.
Well, I always like to throw in the note here that I love Allen Lazard. And I mean, he was one of my first Devy picks. And I mean, I was crushed when he wasn't drafted. I thought that was absurd. He had a good combine. He was good in college. But I mean, we've got a sense of kind of what he is at the NFL level, which is a good, not great player. I do think, and again, I would encourage people to check out Bjorn Yang Barnett's piece up on the site using our underdog advanced rate tool, and specifically the Stack Explorer part of that, to look at how stacks have different advantages based on where you're picking them and what the types of players are. And it's not that you're not going to occasionally get the advantage of having a QB with a receiver who isn't as good. Mm-hmm. We know that there are scenarios where that can play out, certainly in a 1 week situation. And yet we're trying to maximize our chances, not think to really narrow paths. And so for me, those types of plays are suboptimal and not necessarily the direction that I'm going with it. I'm certainly not telling people to never do it or that it won't work. But as we think through it, I mean, I'm really looking to try and get QBs where I think that they're going to hit with the guy. And we mentioned Jerry Jeudy. There's still some risk there. Does he have a strong enough volume thesis? Is Russell Wilson good enough to make him blow up? But you look at some of the things that Jeudy has done, and you look at some of the context of, even guys going back to college who he was playing with, who are now superstars, and he was as good or better at the time. I mean, he is the next guy to erupt if things go in the right way. And I mean, he's little, he's fragile. I think that is always going to be a concern for you. But, and it was actually kind of unsettling to me and uncomfortable to hear Sean Payton say the things about Nathaniel Hackett that we were all kind of saying over the last year. But I mean, he's come out very strongly and said that coaching is going to fix a lot of this. He's put some pressure on himself. It's going to be interesting to see. But I do think that if you believe in Judy, then you need to believe in Wilson, at least in those drafts together. I think that part makes sense for me. I mean, I really want Aaron Rodgers with Garrett Wilson. I mean, I think that Garrett Wilson jumping to next year potentially being the 101, I mean, those things are kind of go together. And Rodgers could have a huge season. I mean, that could end up being just a good pick in a vacuum to where maybe you're not even that worried about who the receiver is with him.
Yeah. And it is nice that, like we were saying, like the Rodgers price, when you have grabbed Garrett Wilson, you end up being the team who wants Rodgers the most. And a lot of the rest of the draft room, he becomes less attractive unless you get the Lazard situation there. So the fact that you can pull that off at cheap prices is pretty attractive. You know, one thing that happened to us here, we do take Russell Wilson with Judy. It's going to be hard to build out anything from a week 17 standpoint. Dulcich and Mims both go. Gerald Everett goes. So we kind of run out of some of the rest of the Chargers Broncos elements, but we can still make this work. We got a 1-4-5-2 build. Russell Wilson at quarterback, Jahmyr Gibbs, Javonte Williams, Devon Achane, and Jalen Warren at running back. Wide receivers, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, Jerry Jeudy, Jahan Dotson, Mike Evans, still just the 5. And then those 2 tight ends, Dallas Goedert and Pat Freiermuth. I did forget we got Javonte building out this Denver bet as well. So got a nice Denver stack there. About to be on the clock here at 13-14. What do you think, Shawn?
Well, Spears is someone that my exposure continues to skyrocket to. Can we look at the overall wide receiver?
Yeah. So we got our guy Thornton, who everyone is scared about from camp. We got Curtis Samuel, along with the Dotson, Rashid Shaheed, Wandale, Khalil Shakur. No more Tim Patrick. Rest in peace. What do you think? Spears is the first click?
Yeah, let's make him the first guy. And then I think we can add Samuel in there to give us a little bit more exposure to Washington, see how that goes, unless I was going to say that the other thing would be to look at some QBs as we kind of look back on it now, have a little bit more time. Are there other QB paths that we would want to consider, or, you know, if you have a couple minutes that you would consider from this turn?
You know, I don't know what the path would be. You know, looking at the ranks would be some big reaches there as far as setting up something with New England. The only thing I was thinking through in retrospect was looking at the where am I here? I was trying to look at this board. Where did Eli Mitchell go? He was on the board for us at one of those selections, and I didn't know if that would have made sense. Yeah, instead of taking Jalen Warren, if Mitchell, and then setting up that San Francisco thing, that was the only thing that I was kind of reverting back to. But other than that, I think it's fine the angle we're headed. I mean, people love it when we play the Sam Howell hits around here, Shawn.
Yeah, Mitchell gives you a little bit of the other side of that game. I think that Warren is interesting, and you think through sort of the logic of it, try and figure out if it makes sense. One of the things the Stack Explorers have suggested is the RB2 off of a situation where you maybe have a QB and a wide receiver is a play that has worked, you know, through multiple years in the past, which is kind of interesting. And so if you have him with Freiermuth and then we came back and selected Pickett, that would be a play that I think we kind of get set up a little bit that way. We end up to where we're not really getting much of a game stack on any of the things that we're building. We're building mostly just through that one team. I mean, obviously we know that both the logic and the research suggests that the game stack is pretty important. And yet I don't mind having some of these teams that are mostly played just through an individual NFL team, in part because we don't know exactly the scenario that is going to occur. And if I have decent exposure to those teams in ways that are very heavily game stacked most of the time,
Yep.
if you like the teams, it makes sense to have some builds that won't be pulled down if that part of the thesis doesn't come through at the crucial moment.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I have enjoyed, and I like using the free Fantasy Life Best Ball Hub exposure tool to look through some of those combinations, because you have these teams, you have these offenses that you're really excited about, but then sometimes you'll notice like, oh my goodness, I have Zach Charbonnet, 80% of the time on my Kenny Pickett stacks. And it's like, I don't want to, have this bet if I'm right on the Steelers, flop in week 17 because I'm so exposed to this one specific bring back. So I do like mixing and matching the configurations with how you're playing it. I had noticed too, like I had early on or through 75 drafts, I have all these Kenny Pickett, but I didn't have any Pickens and Deontay Johnson together just because I was normally taking one or the other and then going Freiermuth, Warren, etc. So reviewing some of those things, and you can upload your CSV to the Fantasy Life Best Ball Hub, completely free tool. You can then go in and we show you week 15 stacks, 16 stacks, 17 stacks. You can look at various combinations. Who are all the, Niners that I have on my Sam Howell stacks? And then again, it gives you the flexibility in future drafts to kind of tilt your exposures accordingly. So I think that's always a good exercise, and why I don't, panic when you don't get the most idealized version of your double stack and bring back, knowing, hey, a lot of other like-minded drafters are trying to get that as well.
And as you say that, we did get an interesting 14-15 turn that is probably not perfect for us.
Yeah, that feels like a meme pick here. So Shawn is getting to experience what happens here. Just punting away $25 to tilt us. You got to tip your cap to kiss my third leg here. A very appropriately named handle for that pick has Patrick Mahomes and Kirk Cousins. And then also takes Kenny Pickett and Sam Howell. So kiss my third leg. Salute, hat tip to you there. There are worse ways to spend $25. So we appreciate you paying the rake for us in this league. And Shawn and I will be able to build out some other secondary stacks here. And this was the thing I was just talking about with Pat on our first one. Like, we had a team where we had Deontay Johnson, I think Freiermuth as well, and Warren. And we ended up taking Jared Goff as our second quarterback. The chat's like, well, why aren't you just waiting for Pickett? And it's like, well, first of all, you never know if Pickett is for sure going to be there. And secondly, it is okay to have stacks without the quarterback. Ideally you're getting to 4 to 5 different stacks, bets on offenses. You're not going to have 5 quarterbacks on your lineup. So it's perfectly fine to have cohorts of players that do not involve the quarterback here. We're about to pick at the 15-16 turn. Our team so far: Russell Wilson at quarterback, Jahmyr Gibbs, Javonte Williams, Devon Achane, Jalen Warren, Tajay Spears, wide receiver Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, Jerry Jeudy, Jahan Dotson, Mike Evans, Curtis Samuel, tight end Dallas Goedert, Pat Freiermuth. When you look at this running back room, Shawn, do you worry about any early season volume? I see a lot of guys here with some massive late season potential, but do you worry about touches out of the gate with this crew?
Not really. I think that Gibbs is going to just explode right out of the gate. Mm-hmm. That helps you. And then with Javonte, it seems like we're getting a cleaner and cleaner look at it. I think that really, if anything, we're in pretty good shape there. I'm excited about how that looks. And so it will let me maybe pass on the running back at these couple of picks if we need to. One of the things I want to ask you about, obviously we run down some of the time, but Kyler Murray, is he somebody in a team where we don't have interesting stacks set up now at this point where you'd like to go and look at his potential upside when he gets there?
Definitely. Let's put Kyler Murray on this team. We also have Dallas Goedert as the week 17 bring back and some late stacking options there as well. Who do you like as this second pick here at 16-1?
Well, we could put Chuba on there just to continue to push up the upside of that running back group. Can we look at the full wide receiver board quickly?
Yeah. You got the Tyquan Robinson, so our Giants guys, Tank Dell, Terrace Marshall.
I think we're probably okay pushing the rest of that group. So the only thing that, even gives you a little bit of pause about taking Goedert, and certainly the Freiermuth pick, which a little bit of that was kind of moving into this direction of making sure that Pickett was a potential late option. He's been generating at least a little bit of positive buzz. Again, right now, more or less, you want everybody to be doing so. I obviously check on a daily basis to see how the Washington Commanders offense is moving through the early stages of camp. Supposedly he has, everybody is like quoting or, air quoting the nuanced connection with Terry McLaurin. That one is pretty funny. They've supposedly hooked up.
Is that the word choice? Nuance?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't know how nuanced that could be, but I love it. I mean, if Terry McLaurin is like, yeah. The thing that's interesting is that some of the team watchers are like, this offense doesn't look good. And you're thinking, well, I mean, you're installing a new offense with a quarterback who hasn't really played. Jacoby Brissett, somebody who's got to, move around different places and learn new offenses, new teammates, new coordinators. And then the Washington Commanders defense is pretty good. So you're not really expecting the offense to look great. You are getting the puff pieces and you are getting the teammates for Howell saying, I mean, this guy is the greatest quarterback of all time. Like, well, I mean, at least that offers some contrast with the people watching practice who are like, they don't look very good. But, and there was one day where the watchers are just like, the offense is terrible. And so you're like, okay, I'm going to need some progress here. But overall, it seems like, again, if you look at the other 31 teams, there probably are 0 days in which the offenses look bad. So, 31 teams versus the Commanders. I'm still excited about that. I'm not even sure what got me going on that other than it's been a lot of fun to follow how these guys are progressing.
I was laughing because like the energy with which you were describing checking in on the Commanders offense every day via the beat reports reminded me of like an angel investor who made a huge investment in a tech startup. And he's like starting to worry that they're bleeding cash or they're kind of burning through the funding. And he's like, I wonder if I made a bad investment, but you're just kind of checking in every day. Can I just see what's going on in the boardroom here? How are things looking? Hey, Shawn, no, we're good. We got a very nuanced relationship with the devs right now. Everything's going completely fine. So we're going to have 2 more picks left to land the plane here. We got a 2-6-6-2 build, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, Jahmyr Gibbs, Javonte Williams, Devon Achane, Jalen Warren, Tajay Spears, Chuba Hubbard, wide receivers, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, Jerry Jeudy, Jahan Dotson, Mike Evans, Curtis Samuel, tight end, Dallas Goedert, and Pat Freiermuth. Let's talk just a second more about Kyler. His ADP had really risen. We got him 30 picks past ADP. Where we took him is where he was going for most of, June. Best Ball Mania drafts. There's been some confidence that Kyler's going to be out there to start the season, which I think pushed him up initially. How are you feeling about Kyler in general this year?
Yeah, I was pretty out, in part because it doesn't seem like they're necessarily planning to have that dynamic of an offense either. And yet you start to hear better news about him. You think about what he could do at the price. If he misses a month and then comes back and is actually decent, that's the second question. It's like, is he going to be rushed back and then he's bad for another 4 to 8 weeks? Then, you're starting to not look as good. When I get locked out though, and again, I take a lot of risk at QB to try and get the right stacks and to get a lot of value. When I get locked out, I think that Murray has become a really interesting way to play it. And if he plays, then I think you're starting to look at Trey McBride as being a must draft, 17, 18 round pick guy. I think that what I got off on that most recent tangent was somehow related to selecting Freiermuth and the fact that when we came to the last turn, the tight ends were the highest ranked guys on my board. And so it does create a little bit of issue. We're in a spot here where probably you kind of want a 7th receiver, but we're in very good shape. We could go another QB and tight end. I think our wide receiver power is good enough to stick at 6. Certainly, we're probably not going to take another running back here. So I like the flexibility that we have as we're going into these final selections.
I was going to ask you, do you have any interest on deep Cardinals wide receivers? Michael Wilson getting buzz, Greg Dortch hanging out there. McBride does come back, who I'm assuming is your preferred stacking partner with Kyler. But what do you think the way is to play this?
Yeah, I think that taking McBride so that we have that piece, and I think even if you've got good tight ends, it makes some sense to add the third guy within the confines of this particular format and tournament. And then as we look at it, it depends a little bit. One of the things I guess I still don't quite understand how drafters can be where they are on Drake London and even Kyle Pitts, who for what he could do at the tight end position, people are not that high on him. But Ritter by himself is a pick that I like in the final round when I think there are some worries about the QB. So I would probably just feel the most comfortable even going that way and doing the more fun play. But I'm certainly fine with Wilson if he's a guy that you need to get a little bit on and think works for this team.
Let's do it. I've been, one thing like looking at like the data stuff and the way those third quarterbacks work. And I completely get that Ritter can get there by himself, but just the fact that we don't have anything set up, with that Chicago and Atlanta game gives me like a little pause with what he can do. Obviously, you're using him to maybe buoy Kyler, not at the start of the season, stuff like that. So I certainly get it. But I just had the the flashback, the PTSD of when you had an extra, I think it was a Travion Williams selection, and I panic selected Desmond Ritter as a third QB. So I see it going both ways there, but building out a really cheap Cardinal stack late with the Goedert bring back felt like a fun way to land that.
Yeah, and Wilson is the kind of player that I tend to be skeptical about, and yet, I mean, one of the things that you do at least read when they're writing about it, and my understanding is that evidence even for how the players should approach it if they're having some of these soft tissue injuries that we've had with Rondale Moore, and he's saying, I'm going to be available this year. I'm taking all of these steps. And part of the fact of the matter is just that some of these guys are so athletic and their physiology is such that, it's going to be tough to avoid some of those types of things. Marquise Brown, good, but it's still a little bit of almost that wide receiver 2-ish kind of play. And so if you have an injury, if you have the number one guy not demanding a huge chunk of volume, and Wilson really is what they want him to be. And again, he's one of these guys who generated some good buzz. You've got the size, athleticism, you have all of those things. He's somebody who wasn't healthy in college. And the whole theory there is like, if you'd been healthy in college, then people would have loved him. And there would have been a battle for his services. So, there's definitely a way that could work. And once we have Murray, obviously, as you say, it makes sense to lean into that. Ritter, I think, is going to be one of the most fascinating players in 2023 because I think that there is a path for him to be like QB 10 and with that kind of spot, and not be like, okay, well, there were 9 good QBs and then he slid in at the 10th slot, where really it's in this tier with, another 15 players. I think there's this potential that he gaps essentially most of the QB window. And, those guys are much more expensive. There's also a scenario where he's one of these guys where you do have him as your third QB and he has a fine season and is maybe in your lineup once and would not have influenced your ability to advance to the playoffs, won't influence your ability to win any money in the playoffs. And you're like, that last spot is something I could have really done something with. So I like the point that you make on that as you kind of work through what we're betting on here and making sure that everything is pointing in the same direction and that our team is internally consistent.
Right. Yeah. And it's the thing too, where it's like, yeah, we have question marks about Kyler Murray, and based on where we drafted him, well outside of the ADP window for the QB window that you guys have written a lot about over the years on RotoViz. But if you think through the bet you're making when you select him, you're betting on him as a 2-window quarterbacks in Russell and Kyler. And we also can apply some situation-specific context to it, know that Kyler has the profile to smash his ADP when he is on the field. So I don't mind making that exception there. Real quick, before I put a bow on this team and recap it for the audio listeners, I did want to get your thoughts on Tyquan Thornton as both the resident Tyquan Thornton bull and also a watcher of training camp reports. The chat fantasy Twitter has been very panicked, I would say, to put it mildly, about the Tyquan Thornton recent camp reports, which I thought were funny juxtaposed to how much he smashed OTAs and how glowing those reports were just a couple of months ago. How are you squaring the latest Tyquan reports as he goes in, almost goes undrafted in this draft?
It's funny because there are certain guys that I'll look at in my rankings that are so far off of the consensus and certainly so far off of what the current buzz is. And I'm trying to figure out how to move them around to reflect the fact that I still think the price is way off, and yet, not completely sabotage any user who, you're going to have users of all different time situations. You think about yourself and other activities that you're involved in outside of your work, and you're like, I need to go in there and I need to have a really productive half hour and whatever it is. If, I'm learning to play chess or piano or shoot arrows. Like, you want it to be very targeted. You don't want to have to like pick through and find out like, oh, this guy is like way off on Tyquan Thornton, and I need to ignore that if I'm like my draft successfully. Anyway, there'll be these guys that I'm looking at, and like, I'm going to move them down, but like, how far can I move them down and still actually reflect what I see as the reality, which is that they are going to be the best play on this team. But then you mentioned the news, and it's just so funny because like the top headline for Tyquan Thornton is Tyquan not worried about having done nothing in camp so far. And you're like, well, maybe like draw a target in camp. That'd be nice.
Yeah. Well, we will follow this situation over the coming weeks. We'll obviously get some preseason action as well. Can't believe, season kicks off a week from Thursday. Wild stuff here. But I did promise to recap this final team. We'll get Shawn's final thoughts here and then be on our way. Make sure you guys are subscribed to this channel, subscribe to RotoViz. Shawn mentioned a piece up that I haven't got to check out yet, about some Tony Pollard, some James Cook stuff. Be sure to check that out. I do have Shawn's author page down below. All kinds of great stuff coming out the RotoViz woodwork these days. But our team here, Shawn, Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray at quarterback. Our running backs, Jahmyr Gibbs, Javonte Williams, Devon Achane, Jalen Warren, Tajay Spears, Chuba Hubbard. Wide receivers, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, Jerry Jeudy, Jahan Dotson, Mike Evans, Curtis Samuel, and Michael Wilson. Tight ends, Dallas Goedert, Pat Freiermuth, Trey McBride. This feels like a Shawn Siegel team. I would say like these running back selections, these early wide receivers, I feel like we got a ton of our favorite guys here. Yeah.
And if Sean Payton is right about himself, then I mean, this is a team that should be in the mix for the whole thing. Yeah. This one was a lot of fun. It's so good to draft from that 12 spot. Hopefully we're able to freshen up for you, where it sounds like you've gotten a lot of those recently, but this was a blast. I mean, I think one of the things that's been so much fun about 2023 is that you can accomplish I shouldn't say you can accomplish the objectives of zero RB, because those objectives are basically to land like 6 of the top 15 wide receivers. You can't really do that. And I'm not talking about like by ADP, but by end of season finish. So you have to have specific player profiles you're attacking too. But it's fun to be able to draft a wide receiver heavy team where then you can get these running back upside plays. And I mean, several years ago to do this, you'd be completely locked out. And we've got guys at the top of our running back room there who, I mean, could be the running back 3, the running back 4. I love that. Obviously some risk at QB, like to play it that way, but the risk goes with this upside scenario that's so much fun. We're loaded at tight end. Pete, I see this as a team that is very well set up for the regular season, but also kind of tilted toward what you need to do to win in those 3 weeks down the stretch. Is that how you would see it in terms of what we went about with this draft?
Yeah, for sure. And I think what was so fun about King Capital's team winning the regular season prize last year is he had all of these things that if you were to just default to, using crutches for touting fantasy, you would say, hey, if you're trying to win the regular season prize, don't do zero RB. It takes too long for the chaos of the season to kick in. Don't draft a bunch of rookies. It takes time for those guys and their roles to progress. Sure, you could build a juggernaut team for the playoffs, but you're not going to win the regular season prize. And then King Capital goes and wins the regular season prize with a zero RB team with a ton of rookies on it. So I do like how that really flipped conventional narratives on its head, and it can prove if things hit right and fast for these guys like Jahmyr Gibbs or an Achane. If Achane can be getting, he's never going to get the work, say, that Dameon Pierce got last year, who was on King Capital's team. But if he's getting those touches and he's efficient with them, he can hit right out of the gate. And so I do like doing that tightrope walk with these builds where you are giving yourself a chance to win both of those prizes there. And I think when you're setting up a lot of stacks on undervalued offenses, that was another trademark of the King Capital team. He was heavy on the cheap Jags with Evan Ingram and Zay Jones. He was heavy on the cheap Texans with Nico Collins and Dameon Pierce. So doing that here with the Cardinals, like the way people think about the Cardinals right now is how everyone thought about the Texans at this time last year. Same with even the Jags. Oh, it's going to take a little bit of time. So I like how we have set this up, and I think we can get some outsized wins based on some of our team level bets.
Yeah, it should be so much fun. And the thing that I have found, and again, one of the things I always try and emphasize to people is draft the way that works for you and know what works for you and know what your strengths are. But with all of this structure as the background, with all of these player profiles and the preferences there as the background, I also think this is a really fun team. And my experience is that the most fun I have drafting is strongly related to how well the teams actually perform. You have less compromise elements to the team. You have more upside. And when you get out of the draft and you're feeling the kind of energy that I'm feeling right now, that I'm feeling from you, I mean, there's a very strong positive there in terms of how you set things up and just how much upside is embedded in that roster. I feel great about it.
Awesome. Well, we got Nick in the chat posting the link here. Check out RotoViz. Shawn, I think we don't do a good job about mentioning there are some discounts out there. Is there a discount code available for people who want to sign up for RotoViz for the first time here?
That is true. We have the 10% discount on your 1-year subscription. So that's a nice little chunk of change off there. It is RV Radio 2023 at checkout. And so make sure you look at that. And if you subscribe through, you can enter that at the end, even after you've subscribed through the work of someone like a Connor O'Driscoll, who just put out the second piece in his blueprint for winning the FFPC tournament, focuses on QBs. Pete, you and I were talking about that today a lot. He's got some data for you that will really help you think through how to attack really in multiple formats. Obviously, Connor's won that tournament before. He's fantastic at it. You can check that kind of thing out. Bjorn and I referenced Bjorn's piece on stacking. He and I are doing an RV Triflex startup right now. We'll have content on that if anybody listening is getting ready to participate in dynasty startups themselves. One of the things, Pete, that we can sometimes forget about when we're doing all these amazing redraft teams, and I'm looking forward to doing a high stakes team with you and the ship chasing guys in the near future. We have a lot of dynasty startups as well at this time too. And I mean, those are just so much fun when you're drafting dynasty right now as training camp is going on. I mean, it's a great way to play fantasy football.
It really is. So much action flying. And Shawn referenced that too. Obviously, over on Ship Chasing, we're starting to do our high stakes managed league drafts. Our Ship Chasing crew is in a slow main event draft right now. If you guys are YouTube members over on that channel, you get access to those videos. And then we just registered. I actually just sent the link over to you, Shawn, and the crew this morning. That will be in mid-August on a Thursday evening. Shawn will be joining Pat, Ben, and I for an FFPC high stakes draft. So I've teased before on Ship Chasing, and here we will have a schedule out for all of those leagues. And then on here, it's business as usual. I just finished my 110th Best Ball Mania draft. Only 40 more bullets left in this contest. We will keep it rolling every single Wednesday up until the start of the season here with Shawn Siegel and the BBM3 champ Pat Kerrane on these Wednesday Best Ball breakfasts. The chat was bringing it today. Always appreciate you guys. Get subscribed to this channel as we march toward 15K. Get subscribed to RotoViz, both the site and the podcast. For Shawn Siegel, I'm Pete Overzet. We'll see you guys next time on